Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your good friend Airsoft Man 819 here again with yet another PC gaming video. I'm finally doing the review slash talk segment on my X58 build, so showing you guys what I've done with it. I've put a couple teasers up on the channel already. I put up one video of me playing Call of Duty at high settings, and I also made a little teaser video already showing the computer up and running. So just as a quick disclaimer, I'm not going to be turning the computer on in this video. It's just going to be strictly talking about it and showing the build off to you guys and showing you guys exactly what I've done with the DX58SO motherboard up there. So I've been really happy with it, to be honest with you. It's been a very pleasurable experience working with the LGA 1366 platform. It is a little bit on the older side, and that's something you're going to have to understand if you're getting into X58 or the LGA 1366 socket in general. You're stuck with DDR3 RAM, SATA 2 speeds. Most of the time, as far as your graphics are concerned, you're going to be stuck with PCI Express 2.0. So it's kind of a dated platform. So you're going to have to kind of get used to getting around that. And obviously, you don't have any M2 SATA support or M2 NVMe support on this as well. You're stuck with just SATA 2. So the fastest you can get as far as storage on one of these X58 boards is a SATA 2 SSD. Well, obviously, the SATA SSD is going to be SATA 3, but it's going to be at SATA 2 speeds. But with SATA SSDs, it's a fairly fast machine. I really don't notice a huge difference between the SATA SSDs that are in it and M2 NVMe speeds. Obviously, the M2 NVMe is going to be faster than this, but not by a whole bunch. You're still going to get a pretty fast startup, and it's going to play games and run programs and everything just fine using SATA SSDs. So the specs, before I start showing you guys what's going on, the CPU I'm running in here is a Xeon X5675. It is a 6-core, 12-thread CPU. It has got a 95-watt TDP. It is a 32-nanometer Westmere chip. And it was released in either 2010 or 2011, right around there. So it's a really good chip, especially being 6 cores, 12 threads. It was very ahead of its time in that regard. Being a 95-watt TDP, it's also fairly efficient. And the cool thing about the X56 Xeons is that almost all of them are overclockable. So you can overclock them, you can raise the base clock on them, and you can add voltage and stuff and clock them pretty high and overclock your memory and stuff in the process. So this system actually is overclocked. Thanks to the G950 push-pull CPU cooler by Dynatron. I made a video on this cooler. I plan on making a test video showing me overclocking this to around 4.2 gigahertz just using the Dynatron G950 CPU cooler for the LGA 1366 platform. So I'm running 16 gigabytes of DDR3 1600 RAM. I'm running 4 sticks. You usually don't do that with X58. You only run the top 3 and triple channel, but I just needed some extra memory. And if you add a 4th RAM stick, the top 3 will still run in single channel, but the bottom one will run in triple channel. But the one that you put in the black slot at the bottom will be in single channel only. So there is no quad channel with X58. You don't get quad channel RAM until you go up to X79. So 16 gigabytes of RAM, Xeon X5675, overclocked to around 4.2 gigahertz. The base clock of the Xeon X5675 is 3.07 gigahertz, but it has a boost frequency of about 3.5 gigahertz. So I'm running it at about I don't know, 700 megahertz higher than it would normally run. So I am getting a little bit of a performance boost, being, over 4 gigahertz all the time, whereas the regular boost clock is only 3.5. So definitely good increase in performance for not that much of a power gain. You're not using that much extra power. You don't have to turn the voltage of the base clock too high to get some pretty decent overclocking results. So as far as storage, I'm running 2 500 gig SATA SSDs, which brings me to a total of 1 terabyte of SSD storage. My graphics is a probably one of the weaker components of this system, but still pretty good, is a GTX 1650 GDDR6 version by PNY. It's a dual fan card, which is actually kind of rare for a 1650, so it's got really good temperatures. It's 1590 megahertz is the base clock on it, but it boosts to over 1800 in most games as long as the temperatures stay pretty low. So for a 4 gigabyte card, having that GDDR6, that faster, better quality memory, definitely helps the 4 gigabyte card. So I'm really not hurting too bad using the 1650. Although I would like something a little bit bigger, like a 1660 or a 2070 or 2080 for this build, and those cards would work in here. So I'm going to walk around here. The case is pretty basic. It's a NZXT H510 black. It's NZXT's entry-level case. I didn't need something super fancy, but I did want to get a new case. A lot of times I build in really old retro cases that are like 10 years old. For this build, even though the motherboard was over 10 years old, being such a high-powered motherboard, capable of such high power, and being a larger motherboard, having active cooling on it, just have all the stuff that I wanted to have hooked up to it. X58 is not a server platform, but it's an enthusiast overclocking platform in a lot of ways. And that's kind of how the X platform is for Intel. You know, the X58, the X79, the X99, you know, now we're all the way up to X299, I think. They're enthusiast overclocking boards and equipment, and you want to have good cooling and modern cooling in your case if you're going to be running a board this high powered. So the case is pretty much stock. I do have my own fans in it. I didn't really like the fans that were included. There was a 120 included on the top exhaust here, and there was also a 120 included in the back exhaust, NZXT brand fans. And I don't know, I just didn't like them very much. They were kind of loud. They didn't move that much air, so I kind of just put my own fans in there. So I'll go ahead and take the side glass off so you guys can get a better view of what's going on in here. There's one single screw at the top, and it has two little snaps on the top that snap the glass in, and it hinges from the bottom and snaps in at the top. So you want to pull towards the top of the glass to unsnap it. There's two little snaps here, then you just lift the glass out of its little track in the bottom, and you've got your glass out. So you just got to be careful. I really don't like glass in my computer cases because it gathers dust and fingerprints and stuff so easily, and it's frustrating to deal with, so it's just not something I usually go for. But like I said, I wanted a more modern case, so I had to deal with the glass in a matter of speaking. So basically, I'm running, as far as the cooling inside the case, I'm running two Corsair AF120 white LED fans in the front. You basically have room to mount either two 120s or two 140s. That also includes radiators as well, 240 millimeter radiators, or you can fit a 280 in the front of this, which is nice if you're wanting to do liquid cooling. You have a mount on the top here for a 140 millimeter fan or a 120. So that's nice. You can do both on the top exhaust. I have a 140 Antec fan in here right now. I have kind of like a random accumulation of fans in here from all different brands. The two front intake fans are white LEDs from Corsair. The top exhaust is a 140 millimeter Antec 2-speed fan, which is actually a really good fan. I really like it for the top exhaust, moves a lot of air. And the back fan is a Rosewell 120 blue LED fan, 3-pin fixed speed. And I also have a 40 millimeter by 20 millimeter fan on the Northbridge heatsink on the motherboard, and this little blue fan was included with the motherboard for overclocking purposes. So I'll go ahead, and I'm trying to figure a good way to take my camera off of its mount because my old tripod is missing a piece and I can't use it right now, so I'm using an older tripod that's even worse. So I'm just going to do it freehand the rest. So there's my RAM. It's G-Skill 1600 rip jaws. Like I said, I have all 4 slots occupied, even though you're not technically supposed to. There's the two Corsair AF120 white LEDs in there. And you can see the extended mounts for 140 fans. So you can mount 140s, or you can put radiators in here. And this whole bracket with the fans in it comes out with these two screws. So if you take out this screw and you take out this screw, this whole bracket comes out, and you can pull both fans out that way at the same time, mount new fans to it, and slide it back in and screw these two down. This isn't a case review, but I just want you guys to know this. So the cable management in here is probably some of the best I've ever done, but it's still not that great. But thankfully, NZXT gives you a huge channel right here to run your cables out of, and there's quite a few channels in the bottom because I have a lot of stuff hooked up to this motherboard. It has to have SATA power hooked up to it because of the extra PCI slots, PCI Express slots. I have a Wi-Fi card down here. It's a Wi-Fi 6 from Asus. I do not have the antennas screwed in. So here's the GTX 1650. It is a PNY dual fan. You can see the dual fans there with the PNY logos on them. So really nice graphics card. It just takes one 6-pin power connector. I have it running up from the bottom here. You can see I added my little Intel Skull heatsink cover. And there's the Northbridge heatsink with the little 40mm fan that so many people were interested in the teaser video. And it's blue LED, so I figured I'd put the Rosewell blue LED fan in the back to match the blue LED fan on the motherboard, and then we'll have the white LEDs in the front. So it's pretty slick. It's basic, you know, by PC standards now, you know, crazy RGB rainbow stuff is taken over. So something this basic is pretty laughed at nowadays, but, you know, I don't really care. I like it. You know, it's more about the power for me. You know, you take a look at this cooler and you know that this isn't built to look pretty. It's built for power, because this cooler, this Dynatron cooler, I really look forward to doing the review of it, showing you guys how to overclock the X58 using this cooler. It's just unfortunate that you can't hardly find them anymore. So I think that about does it. There's the Antec 140 fan on the top. You can see, maybe through there, that says Antec. But you can see the holes have these wide slots in them, so you can mount a 120 or a 140 just using the same hole. Pretty efficient. So I think that does it, really, for the inside. And I told you guys everything that I've done to it, everything that's inside of it. Overclocking this motherboard is a little bit different than overclocking with other X58 motherboards because it's an Intel branded board, and this is one of the last generations of Intel boards. Intel had their very own overclocking suite and everything. So the way that you overclock an Intel motherboard, an Intel X platform motherboard, like basically they made these X58 boards and then they made X79 boards. And when X99 came out, Intel was no longer making boards, so you don't have to worry about that with the X99s. But if you're getting an Intel branded, Intel produced motherboard in either the X58 or the X79 platform, just know that it has its own overclocking suite and its own means of adjusting the voltages and stuff for the processor and the memory and such. So just know it's going to be a little different, so there's going to be a learning curve with these boards. And I'll show all that in the overclocking / review of this. Basically, I'm going to take overclocking this motherboard and the review of this G-Tron cooler and push them into one video because they both kind of walk hand in hand. Because to get the overclocks that I was getting, you have to have a cooler that's at least this good or something that's liquid. But having this size cooler with a 120 exhaust immediately right here and a 140 exhaust immediately right here, just sucking all the hot air out, plus a 120 fan being the very center of this, with two more 120s blowing straight into them, it stays cool as a cucumber. And you guys will see that when we get to overclock this thing. So basically, I'll go ahead and finish showing you guys the rest of this. There's not much else to see. Mostly just my SSDs on the other side. My semi-okay cable management. It's not the greatest, but it might pass a test. I don't know. I'll let you guys be the judge of my cable management, because you always are anyway. Oh, and this has filters in it as well. It has a filter in the back. Let me slide this forward. Yeah. It has a filter in the back here. You just push it down for your power supply. You want to put your power supply face fan down for that reason. And if it's not, flip it. So there's that. And there's a filter on the inside over here that I'll show you guys as well once we get this side off, and you guys can laugh at my cable management. There's a filter here on the side. That's where your two front fans draw most of their air from. And there's another small filter and vent on the very bottom here. So the bottom and this long vent here is where your front fans are going to draw air from. 2 screws hold the back end. They're captive. Don't really like this very much, how they do this. You've got these little hooks in the front that hook into these slots in the front of the case, and then the way that the screws... Ah, crap, I'm knocking it on stuff. Crap. Stuffed the case a little bit right there. But the way these screws mount in, I don't like this. This just feels chintzy at the bottom. It's really... This side panel is really weak feeling, and I'm not a huge fan of it. I'm not a huge fan of modern cases in general, if you haven't noticed. So yeah, I'm just going to point that out. So here's my cable management. It's not too awful. I'll go ahead and dismount the camera one more time so you guys can take a peek. And we'll wrap this up, and I'll get to work on the overclocking video. And maybe I'll upload some more gameplay with this baby too. Maybe some overclocked gameplay. There we go. So I have an Inland Professional 500 gig, actually 512 over here, and then I have a Western Digital Blue 500 gig over here. I'm using the good old tried and tested EVGA 650 watt BQ semi-modular power supply. And yeah, you have some good cable routing. You can actually route your 24 pin through this slot if you want to, but mine wasn't long enough, so I didn't do that. But you also have some Velcro here to tie your cables down, and you have plenty of space in here in the front for all your cables and stuff to shove them in there. And there's your other filter down there in the bottom where the fans draw air from. So you have plenty of room to route your cables from the front intake fans right here. So a very easy case to build in. It's just a little on the cheap side. You have good access to the back of your motherboard. You have all these cable routes, which most of them I'm using. So it's very easy to build in. It's very stylish looking. It's a good looking case. It's a functional case. It's just a little on the cheap side, but if you can get past that, the H510 and the H line of cases are actually really good. So I think that's all I have for this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed my little walkthrough of my Intel X58 build, and I hope you guys look forward to new videos with this system because I plan on making some more. So see you guys later, and I hope you enjoy.